so much. For listeners, I have Molly Soto, from Rooter Finn, who's going to share her title with us to begin.
I mean, title schmeidle.
Okay, I like it.
I'm now a group vice president at Rooter Finn, so I haven't actually shared that on LinkedIn yet, but was promoted late last week.
Yay!
So
late last week.
Yeah, late last week, and I wear two roles. I do some client work, internal comms, but I also am part of our AI accelerator team, doing AI product development. So
great. And
no 2 days are the same.
No 2 days are the same. And are you at liberty to say how many clients you work with at one time, just for a picture of like the database of your head?
So I have dramatically reduced my client load since taking on this dual role, if you will. But right now I'm working exclusively with three clients. Typically have more like 6. And we work heavily in the pharma and biotech space.
Okay.
So larger clients like Teva and Merck and Pfizer, Lundbeck, pharma companies like that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought I'd jump in. We have a little script going, but I did want to kind of do an icebreaker. So I used to produce a podcast about sound and the arts, and I was thinking about Smokey Robinson's song, which I started to rewrite on behalf of internal comms, on behalf of change managers. So the rewrite, you might recognize the tune is, if you feel like giving me a work day of devotion, I second those emotions. So we're talking about, or I'm hoping we'll talk about, emotions. What is the human piece that's happening with your clients? Not just the logical piece and the job role piece. Behind AI adoption, because that's really the blocker, right? All the stats say that's the blocker. 54% of executives say it's skills and understanding is the barrier. MIT Sloan, they say it's people issues, which are more like trust, fear. For me, like when I don't like something, I satirize it. I'm going to turn it over to you. That's your sort of first icebreaker question.
That's my icebreaker. Okay, so I'll just say the first thing that comes to mind to me is that people have historically been able to hide behind certain things. Okay. Whether it's writing really good communications or being really strategic, they could kind of be behind the scenes. And what I'm seeing AI do is you can't hide anymore. That relationship building piece of our roles is something that will be amplified in the coming years. And so I see that leaders, I'm not saying all leaders hid behind things, but I'm saying that there is going to be a real divide in what makes a good leader in the future. And I think we'll see some of those skills that we used to hang our hat on changing as far as communicators go and leaders go. And some of the big skills that will be needed are going to be, building relationships, reading the room, authenticity, meaning, putting meaning into messaging. So there is going to be more and more of, they used to call them soft skills. No, the reality is now it's the skills you must have. Those will be what will be needed more than ever.
I love this. I did not expect this. That's what I love about these, recording these conversations. Like, we could be not recording and not have planned this, and, it would just be like, wow. I don't read anything. I don't read anything like that. That's amazing.
I don't want to make it sound like people were hiding behind things like they didn't have skills. It just was like they didn't have to represent them as much as they're going to have to.
Right.
They just weren't the main skills in their role from day to day. And you know what? In the future, like they're going to have to be. They're just going to have to be the main skills. If we want to bring our employees along, if we want to build trust, in a world that's increasingly like less trustworthy.
Right.
We have to have we have to have those historical soft skills be in the limelight at all times.
Wow.
And so that's where we need to be building, just building expertise, showing our work, bringing value in all those areas.
Yeah. On LinkedIn, you recently said skeptical to capable, and I thought that was amazing. I also want to hold on to the wisdom that the research, actually, that fear inhibits imagination, right? And do you want to speak to like the imagination piece of the people that you work with?
Yeah. So, I was recently at a conference and they talked about people coming in and not only being fearful, but also thinking, I might be the only one that's carrying this fear. So it's not even being discussed. So it's kind of this double-edged sword because they're carrying this fear. We're all hearing about AI. A lot of companies are trying to jump into adoption faster than governance.
Right.
So there's insecurity there. Never before has there been, this type of transformation with technology that not only is happening within companies, but employees and people are seeing it on the outside as well, right? So they're feeling the pressure, they're reading the headlines, and they're bringing that to work. So I think there's a lot of employees at many different levels right now that are coming to work with this smile on their face, but internally they're like, I have some fears. Like, where's my role going? How's my company going to change? Like, how am I supposed to learn AI? That's really a big topic. And then not only are they holding onto that, they're thinking they're maybe the only ones thinking those things. Because I think it's very much it's an inner fear that's not really being talked about much.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, it's just, you can see the weight in these people, coming to work with these question marks over their head.
Yeah.
And so when I say like inspire, or take people from that, feeling of being skeptical to being capable, I'm really saying like it doesn't happen overnight. And more of the change management that we've been helping clients with is like bringing employees along from the very start in this uncertainty. And so what does that look like? That could look like employee hackathons. That can look like a CEO that talks about what he's learning or she's learning with AI, and how they're experimenting.
Yeah.
That could look like leaders within the organization that are willing to share learnings they've gained from AI, like trial and error, or, environments that employees are invested in building skills that aren't necessarily like how you have to incorporate AI in your role, but it's like, we're invested in you to set you up for the future. Regardless if you stay at this company or not, we want you to learn these foundational AI skills so you feel empowered. Because that's going to change how you work at this company, and that's going to change how our entire culture is.
So that was my follow-up question. So it sounds like depending on the culture, there is some community of practice stuff happening. What I'm envisioning when I say that, because I have a communities background, is people coming together on a meeting to share kind of what they did, not just a little bit more than prompts, more like their thinking, which could get really interesting or might not feel as productive as people think it should feel, because if you've got like somebody from finance with somebody on the business side and somebody on sales, like they're probably asking, well, why do you want us to talk to each other? But if that's happening, based on some of the examples you shared where leaders are modeling it and so forth, is anybody talking about those quiet voices inside that you referenced earlier? Are they giving any airtime to those emotions, that fear that I'm the only one?
I see companies that are doing this really well, and I'll tell you there's few of them that I see. And companies that are really trying to do change management like they've always done it.
Yeah.
Right? So like this is our narrative and it's set in stone, and this is our messaging framework, and we're going to have thought leaders and champions, and those are all great things.
Right.
But as I said earlier, you can't just write a narrative when the narrative is evolving with this stuff.
Right.
Right? So you can't just say, like, here's our messaging framework and narrative and strategy when it has to evolve quickly. And you talked about, like, different people being in the room, and that's why I love, you know, going from this feeling. My favorite thing is seeing people go from this feeling of threatened to this role of, like, having some curiosity. And that's the big thing, is, like, being able to be curious and then being able to actually act on that. That curiosity within a safe environment. And then from that curiosity and those shared stories, the great thing about AI is when you learn AI well, you learn it strategically. And it's like you will pick up ways that finance is doing it that you could apply to comms. And that's because it's a new way of thinking, and it's a new way of looking at things.
Right.
It opens new perspectives. And so when you start thinking, how can I take what comms is doing and apply it to my role?
Yeah.
That's where those connections start happening. And when you get people to that, where they're story sharing and they're, you know, looking what use cases are coming out all around them. And it could be everything from the manufacturing floor to what the CEO is doing to prepare for his earnings calls. You know, when you learn about those things, it can be a little agnostic. Like, you can take some of those foundational elements and apply them in different ways for different roles. And that could look like building an agent. Oh, so the CEO built an agent to help him prepare for earnings, or her prepare for earnings.
Right.
What could that look like in my role as a people manager on the manufacturing floor? Well, maybe I want an agent to help me prepare for tough conversations with an employee. You know, so it's really like learning the capabilities and the potential of it to be able to apply. And you can't learn that unless you're having those conversations.
That's amazing stuff. It's, you know, it's one of the things, another thing I read that's probably worth talking about is that, you know, AI capability is evolving faster than institutions can adapt. And the policy response moves at the pace of ideology, but technology's way out in front. I don't know if you have any comments on that. Like, it's just...
I mean, there are industries that are super risky, and they have to be careful.
Right.
You know, they cannot expose certain information.
Right.
You know, the financial industries and the healthcare industries, like, they just have to be careful. And so there is that side of it. There are other industries that can be a little more risky, you know, and see a lot of the smaller organizations that are actually adopting it faster. And that isn't a shock. I mean, I think the one thing is making sure that your employees know that that the conversation's happening, you know, that you're figuring it out. There's no real finish line to any of this. So I think as a leadership team, you need to be talking that way. Like, this isn't going to solve all of our problems.
Right.
You know, we're not going to get somewhere someday and be like, we have AI figured out and it's all running wonderfully and our data is beautiful. Like, this is an evolving, everlasting technology, just like the internet was.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you have things that are created and then they're reimagined. You know, you think about the telephone, and I know I've written about this, but like the telephone was created and it's been reimagined in so many different ways.
I know, it really has.
And so the same thing will happen for AI. Like, AI has been around, but generative AI is fairly newer, and it's being reimagined in different ways, in new ways, you know, new modalities. It's constantly evolving. And so you just, as an organization, need to make sure that your employees know you're being thoughtful in that area. There's conversation happening.
Right.
Give them the ability to know what they can and cannot do, because there's so many, I think, organizations that are just not talking about it, and then their employees are, you know, on ChatGPT on their phone, or they're making sure that they're scrubbing all the information so that they can use certain, like Claude, because they really love Claude. I think there just needs to be, the empowerment happens at conversation levels. And so this conversation needs to be happening with employees.
And the conversation is like a governance, right? It's that missing
guidelines. It's guidance.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's guidance, and it's not throwing out a 40-page document and expecting your employees to read it. It's modeling this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's talking about ethical considerations. I think AI brings that a lot more as far as technology goes than we've ever had to look at before, because of the psychology within it.
Yeah.
The psychology change. So ethical considerations.
Yeah.
Morality. All of these, typically these weren't conversations we were having in the workplace. Now we need to talk about judgment, and we need to talk about what is true and what is untrue more than ever.
Right.
And so I think, it's not an easy conversation to have. And I have seen leadership teams, like I said, they're not afraid to have these conversations with their employees, because they look at their employees like adults. And that's what needs to happen here. That transparency and authenticity that we've been preaching for how long really needs to be shown more than ever. And modeled. So I don't know where I was going with that. But.
No, it's great. It brings up so much for me. The one piece I think I'm struggling with the most, I don't have any problem imagining use cases or things that I'd love AI to do for me. And I found I've really loved the sort of meta aspects of it, of turning your prompt on itself. Write me a prompt that's the best of the prompts. That's, that's piece is fun for me. But the piece that I'm struggling with, you alluded to it earlier, is getting ready for hard conversations. Because a lot of my focus right now in change management as a consultant is dealing with the emotional side. That's why we started the conversation the way we did, singing about emotion, is turning to AI to prep you for a hard conversation. To me, that's like the work that I'm doing with connective communication, which is grounded in nonviolent communications, it's about human needs, right? It's a needs-based framework. And companies, businesses, they don't talk about need. They barely talk about emotion. There's feelings, there's needs, there's observations, and then there's asks, right? That's a whole framework. And I kind of, to me, if I were to use AI to prep for a hard conversation, say I was like a CFO and I needed to talk to a director about, I don't know, bad performance or not what we needed as a company, I'd want to do that with a human. Yes, you can get pointers, you can create a persona or whatever with AI, and AI will think of, emotional factors, psychological factors that maybe you haven't thought of. But to me, it's more about getting in touch with yourself. And so I'm struggling the most, I think, with AI apps that want to do nonviolent communication with you on your phone, right? Because it's the human piece, it's that transaction. It's just like what we're doing here on video. That touch of connection all of a sudden goes away because I picked up my phone and I'm chatting with ChatGPT. What do you think about that? Is that going to crash and burn, or am I going to crash and burn?
No, I think there's valid side and valid points to everything you just said. So I think AI can help us open our perspectives in many ways. And building AI personas can show us oftentimes things that we haven't really had at our fingertips, right? So we just recently, I worked with a client. We did multiple focus groups throughout their organization globally.
Okay. Yeah.
Built 13 employee personas, and typically you would get a PDF of that. You get a PDF. Here's a typical manufacturing plant worker, and here's their needs and their communication styles and preferences and their pain points and how to reach them, and that's great. AI allows us to take that and now have it be a digital tool.
Right.
Where where the comms team can run communications through it and be like, oh my goodness, this is not going to land with our sales team. Mm-hmm. And here's some recommendations from AI that I can take back and apply.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's never going to be as good as sitting in the room with the sales team and
right.
being like, hey, I have this communication. What do you all think of it?
Right.
That is going to be gold. But a lot of our teams can't do that. So I'm like, opening your mind up to new perspectives is super powerful.
Yeah.
Pattern recognition is super powerful with AI, but it's never going to replace having an honest conversation with someone or being challenged by someone. I mean, we all know that unless you program your AI assistant or agent really well, you can get them to say pretty much anything you want them to say. Wow. Just by typing in certain things, right? We've seen this, like, they're very accommodating, if you will, and reassuring.
Right.
And, in reality, many of us work with people that aren't. Always accommodating and reassuring. And those, I look back in my history, in my career, and I think the toughest conversations are where I grow the most.
Right.
And so we can never take those out of the equation.
Right.
Those always have to be human to human. And that's why I really do think in the future there will be more shared experiences. And the drive for shared experience is going to be stronger than ever before. And so that excites me. I think we see the same thing with social media. And like social media came about and people were like, I feel so good. I have all these friends, but they're not real friends in real life. And now we're seeing the ramifications of all of that, like with mental health and anxiety and people feeling lonely when they have 5,000 friends. That goes to show you the human psyche needs people. We need people.
Yeah. We have just under 4 minutes left, and I wanted to keep it short for attention spans. Thank you, social media, for your contribution.
Social media.
This is such a great conversation. I wanted to give it back to you. What would you like to close with? You've dropped so many lovely gems. What else would you like to say on this sort of the human piece behind AI and...
on the human piece behind AI, I would just encourage people to, I said this earlier, be curious. I think there's nothing more empowering about AI than knowing the good, the bad, and the ugly. So not being afraid to have conversations about, I have colleagues that come to me and they're like, this environmental impact thing, Molly, this is really scary. And it is, it's taking up so much massive amounts of data. And I look at them and I say, it is really, really sucking our energy sources fast. Maybe it'll be a breaking point for our country. Like maybe sustainable energy will be more of a, we have to do this. Maybe people will innovate and come up with, I think I read something about solar panels in space. Did you hear anything about that?
I haven't seen that. No, I really want solar panels in our urban areas. Yeah.
And I'm like, if anything, humans are adaptable.
Right.
We go through tough things and we think, I could never go through that. And we come out on the other side stronger. And so I would just say, like AI, there's so many great things. And I'm reading about it in the healthcare space and just thinking about it in the ways that it will predict things that we've never been able to predict. And less gas on the road because there will be more of an industry or orchestration where transportation will be radically changed. So some of these areas are amazing.
Yeah.
It's also going to be put in the hands of a lot of bad people and it's a powerful tool. Yeah. And so thinking about both sides of the coin and having conversations about that, human to human, is where you will feel security. And so my encouragement is just having these conversations, like reading about it, talking about it, not being afraid of the unknown. I just think that's where humans need to be when we're thinking about AI, the AI topic.
Yeah. I think we need to embrace the spirit of right in the time when we're, pretty depressed by everything going on and things, sort of falling back to, the past, the standards of the past. It feels like this is the time where we most need our powers to reimagine. It's like
yeah. And if your mind starts to go there and you're like, this is like giving me more fear or making me more depressed, like go out and take a walk.
Yeah, go touch grass.
Go hang out with your friends. Right. Like this is where we find joy. Yeah. Right? This is where we find joy. Yeah. So that's my encouragement, is having those conversations, but also knowing when you have to step away and you have to just reconnect with people around you. Yeah. Yeah. That's where you can be refueled as well. So
that's great. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and I hope people get as much out of this as I got.
It was a fun conversation.
It's our pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Even if I don't know all the answers, like I said, I just love having these discussions.
Yeah, it keeps it real. It helps us, narrate our experience where we're reading all this sort of doom and gloom framing of things, and that again suppresses this good bad, the duality mentality suppresses our ability to see other possibilities, like in many ways. It doesn't have to be a two-party system politically, right? I mean, it's like or whatever, right? The earth doesn't have to live or die, right? Like we can open up a little bit. So I
call it the land of the gray.
Yeah.
The gray space, that's where we're existing right now, and it's okay.
Yeah. The liminal space, for a lot of people would say. Thank you so much.